Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Dr. Maureen Bickley from the Museum of the Earth and Cayuga Nature Center joining us from Ithaca, New York. And we are going to do a dinosaur story time, and you're going to get to learn all about dinosaurs and some really cool fossils. So you got to see everything. So I'd like to present to you Dr. Maureen.
So thank you, everyone. I'm so excited about coming into your library and speaking to you and your patrons. And what I want to do is, I think this summer you're talking about stories and being in the stories, and it's sometimes, I think, hard to understand how we could tell stories about dinosaurs, but I don't know. I guess you have to be around 6-year-olds. They tell stories about dinosaurs all the time. So what I wanted to do is first talk a little bit about some words that we're going to talk about, and make sure that everybody's kind of on the same wavelength. And one is, what is a fossil? And the other is, who are the scientists that study fossils? And then, what is a dinosaur? So we're going to talk about all those things. So I thought we would cover some of this information. So what is a fossil? So fossil is something that was alive a long time ago. It could be dinosaurs, but it could be plants, it could be trilobite, it could be shells of some sort. It could even be bacteria. So there's so many ranges of things that could have fossilized, and that is a process that when the animal dies or the plant dies, it gets incorporated into the rock and turns into rock, and we find them. And so what I want to do first is show you some fossils of dinosaurs. And so I have 2 bones here. Let's see if I can do this right. And this is a dinosaur bone of a Edmontosaurus. And I think I have a toy of Edmontosaurus to show everyone, if I can get through to all my toys. And I will show you. So I'm sure children probably know what they are. I don't see my Edmontosaurus toy. And so it was a dinosaur that was 40 feet long, about the size of a T-Rex, lived during the time T-Rex was around, probably ran away, probably got eaten by a T-Rex. And then this is a modern dinosaur bone. So this is a turkey bone of the same part of the leg that this is. So you can see the difference. And so what's the difference between, they're both dinosaurs. This is a living dinosaur, which is no longer living, but it's a dinosaur that's alive today. And then this is an extinct dinosaur. And you can see that a paleontologist who studied fossils would have to know what these bones look like to put them together, because most of the time these bones are often in little pieces. You don't actually find them all together and beautiful like you might find your turkey bone. So this is just an idea of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to see some fossils. Many of my fossils are not real fossils. This is a real fossil, and the reason I have is this: I am an educator, and education-wise, they don't always give me the best fossils. Those are kept for scientists. And so I get to show you fossils that are sometimes casts of real ones. But there is a real one there somewhere else. So that is a real actual fossil, and it's very heavy because it's rock. So it's a stone and no longer a bone compared to this one, which is very light. All right. So what is a dinosaur? So we're going to spend the rest of our time, and we're going to talk about dinosaurs. So what is a dinosaur? And a dinosaur turns out to be a specialized animal that lived during a period of time of Earth's history. Still alive today, because birds are part of those animals. It's evolved into birds. But the dinosaurs that lived a long time ago are discovered by bones. And so the only way dinosaurs can be identified is through their skeleton. And so there's a specific skeletal appearance that we have for dinosaurs, and that is the way we can say it's a dinosaur or not. And so I have some dinosaurs. So here is a carnotaur. And here's an iguanodon. These are both dinosaurs. And here's a Mosasaurus. And here is a Dimetrodon. These last two are not dinosaurs for multiple reasons, but one is that their skeletons are not the same. They're both kind of, well, actually, this is a lizardy kind of animal. Mosasaurs were swimming lizards. And Dimetrodon is actually on the road to becoming mammals. So Dimetrodon was the kind of connection between reptiles and mammals, and it was lived a long time ago before the dinosaurs. So it went extinct before the dinosaurs. So lots of animals lived during this ancient time, but not all of them were dinosaurs. And that's what paleontologists do. They study those and they tell us a little bit about those animals, and they tell us a little bit about their lives and what they look like. And that allows people to tell stories about them. So what I wanted to do is start off with a story about the Stegosaurus, because behind me, I don't know if you can see just a little bit here, is a tail. We're going to see the rest of them is the tail of the Stegosaurus. And we have a life-size model of a Stegosaurus in our museum, which I am speaking from. We're speaking from the Museum of the Earth, but I am in the dino zone. So I'm in an area surrounded by different kinds of dinosaurs. And so this is just one of our dinosaur exhibits. And so we're going to read the story about the Stegosaurus as the friendliest dinosaurs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Stegosauruses. All right. So we're going to talk about Stegosaurus, the friendliest dinosaur. I have a friend. He is often mistaken for a dragon, although he isn't one. My mother is pleased because he always helps her hang the laundry out to dry. But it is difficult to make clothing for him because he has so many plates. One day, when we went on a trip, it was lucky he was with us because he helped us cross the river. Big animal. One year, we used him as a float during a carnival. My friend always gives my uncle a hand when it's time to plow the field. His plates are perfect shields when I have snowball fights with my friends. Sometimes he asks me to paint his plates different colors so that he can be more handsome and he can find a girlfriend. One day, he came to the beach with me, and a shark had a nasty surprise. One afternoon, while he was asleep, I turned him into a castle. No longer a dragon, I guess. When we play hide and seek, I always find him first. His head almost touches the ground, so he spends hours smelling the plants in the backyard at home while he scares away the bugs bothering him with his tail. Do you know who my friend is? The Stegosaurus that sleeps with me every night. Good night. So this book is probably a book that your parents would read to you at night, but being a dinosaur person, I would read this anytime. But I love it because it tells a story of Stegosauruses in a childlike way, but it also kind of gives you a little science too, such as him using his tail to swat away flies. Well, back in the Jurassic time when Stegosaurus was alive, he didn't just, sorry, I hooked myself up. He didn't just swat his tail for to swat away flies. He had these big spikes on his tail, which were solid bone, and those would whack whatever came. Let me show you up close so I can show you the tail. This is a tail spike, and you can see that it goes from one end all the way down. And what would happen on this is it would be covered with the nail that we have on our fingernails, it would be covered with the same material. It's called keratin, covered completely. So at the end, it would come to a tip. So as he swung it around, he could really do some damage with the end of that tip. We know this because there are some little lines here, which are really hard to see, and I'm going to show this to the plate. And here's a plate up close of a plate, and you can see those lines on this plate as well. And those lines are blood vessels, and we see that in modern animals today when there is a keratin cover on it, because keratin is a lot hard to believe, than bone, and the blood vessels would just grow into the bone and have a little place for it to grow. So that is an advantage. Remember in the story, he was painting the plates on his dinosaur to make him more attractive to females. But we think in real life that these blood vessels would become more bloody or enlarge and actually change the color of these plates. And so on the back of the Stegosaurus are all these plates. I'm going to stand next to him so you can see if I don't get caught up. And you can see all these huge plates on him, and they would be covered with this keratin. And if he wanted to maybe scare a predator, he could flash those and potentially change color and scare the predator, or he might use it as a way to attract females or a mate. And who knows if it was male or females that did that, and attract a mate by changing color. We know that they had lots of blood vessels in there, and so we kind of also think that they might have used those plates for temperature regulation. So if you're really cold and you go out and your blood is all up there at the top of your head, of your body, you can absorb a lot more heat, and it will help warm you up. And since their bodies were so big, once they warmed up, it would take them a long time to cool down. And so they could regulate their temperatures for a long period of time. Unlike a lot of the reptiles today who might have to go out, warm themselves out, go find food, go warm themselves up again, digest their food. With these guys, because their bodies were so big, once they changed their temperature or warmed up, they probably stayed warm most of the day. But those plates weren't probably used for protection as much as these let's go from, yeah, thank you. As much as these spikes were used for protection. Because if you have a bunch of plates up there that are full of blood, you certainly don't want to get bit on those. So they weren't probably used for protection as much as attracting your mate, or to scare something off, and to heat and to regulate your temperature. So I just also want to just show you, and right today, of course, at this time of the day, we have temperature going, and you can see this guy has got his head down, way down at the very end. You can see the trees there. His head goes down. I don't know if there's a good shot of that. So he did have his head down, in his to eat plants, because he was an herbivore. He ate plants, but he was very big and lived at a time where there are other animals that live. And I don't know if this will be interesting to the children who are listening, but for the adults, turns out that Stegosauruses were farther away. So dinosaurs lived a long time. So Stegosauruses lived during the Jurassic period of time, maybe 150 million years ago. And T-Rexes lived much later and never actually met the Stegosaurus. And in fact, the Stegosaurus is farther away in time to T-Rex than T-Rex is to us. So T-Rexes went extinct about 65 million years ago, and the difference between the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex is far longer than 65 million years. So that's how long dinosaurs are around. And Stegosauruses weren't the first dinosaurs around. It turns out that some of the first dinosaurs actually walked around in New York. So close to where you are, your library is, and north or south eastern New York, we have some footprints of dinosaurs, and they're called coelophyses. And so those are the only evidence that we have in New York of dinosaurs. We just don't have a lot of we don't actually have any bones of dinosaurs. So this is a footprint of a coelophysis like dinosaur. And this one I think is from Massachusetts, but it'd be about the same same age, and three-toed with claws of Coelophysis. Not a about the size of a velociraptor, but velociraptors once again lived when T-Rex lived, and Coelophysis lived before the Stegosaurus. So we have this huge, almost 200 million years of animals that were alive during the dinosaur time. So we had this huge amount of animals. We're always finding new dinosaurs because there was such a large time that these guys were alive. So the other thing is, what was alive? What was the predator that Stegosaurus was using his spikes for? And it is the Allosaurus. So I have not a fossil of Allosaurus, but we have him painted on the wall with a model of his head coming out. And this is an Allosaurus, a cousin to T-Rex, but not closely related. Was a big, what we call theropods, because they were the animals ate dinosaur or ate meat, and he had 3 claws on his front feet, where T-Rex only has 2. But has lots of teeth on his in its mouth. And I wanted to show you some fossils of the got him down here, of the Allosaurus. We'll see if we can get it down on the table here. So this is a claw of an Allosaurus. You can see him compared to my hand. This would have been his front hand, and he had claws. And once again, the claws would have been like a cat claw, so it would have had the sharp nail on it. And he had 3 that he would have, and he probably, unlike T-Rex, he probably could use these for defense or killing too, grabbing an animal that he was eating, or trying to stop the Allosaurus from whacking him. This is a jaw. This is a juvenile jaw, so this is probably teenager age Allosaurus. This is a lower jaw of his left side, and you can see he's just full of teeth. But you notice that there's some missing. So it turns out that dinosaurs would eat, and they didn't brush their teeth, so they would lose their teeth, and you can see some of them growing in, some who haven't grown in yet, and here's some that are growing just newly broken off. And so they would regrow their teeth, so it wouldn't matter if they lost their teeth. And so a lot of times we will find separate teeth because they fell out of the dinosaur's mouth. So my model has this beautiful white teeth, and very unlikely that any of these meat-eating dinosaurs had beautiful white teeth, that they probably had really gross, stinky mouths with loss of teeth, because this is pretty much how we find most of the jaws of these guys. You notice that they're black. So in the fossilization process, these are both casts of a dinosaur bone, of dinosaur bones, and so they were painted in the color that they were actually, so the fossils are actually black, and that is because they have they were found in a quarry that had lots of iron in them, and so different minerals that come into a dinosaur fossil will change the color. It's not that we decided to paint them black because he was big, mean, meat-eating dinosaur. It's because of where he was found, and it helps me to know kind of where they're found when I buy casts of these. So these are things that you can buy out, but there are actual fossils that are made from these fossils. Okay. So teeth are an important way for us to talk about dinosaurs. And if you're a mammal fossil paleontologist, you're going to talk about teeth, because teeth survive fossilization great. And sometimes you get nothing else of that animal but the teeth, because that enamel that is on their teeth, even on our teeth today, is really hard, and it doesn't break down as fast as bone or anything else. So sometimes your whole fossil or your whole skeleton of the animal disappears, but all that's left are the teeth, and we know some animals only by their teeth. So I wanted to read a second book which is called How Do Dinosaurs Eat Their Food? And little history on this is by Jane Yolen and Mark Teague, and it's like one of my favorite books. Partially because I have children who are about 20-ish, little over 20, and we loved Mark Teague's early books because we loved his drawings. So he does all the illustration in this book, and in the inside of the book, there's all the dinosaurs that were here doing really goofy and crazy things. So I'm going to read this book because I just find both of these authors and illustrators to just be very funny, but the dinosaurs are beautifully drawn. So let's go with the book. So the first page, we have what's called a Cryolophosaurus, and he has this funny little crown on his head. How does a dinosaur eat all his food? Does he burp? Does he belch? Or make noises rude? Does he pick up his cereal, throw down his cup, hoping to make someone else pick it up? Does he fuss? Does he fidget or squirm in his chair? Does he flip his spaghetti high in the air? Does a dinosaur glare? How does the dinosaur eat all his food? Does he spit out his broccoli, partially chewed? Does he bubble his milk? Does he stick beans up his nose? Does he squeeze juicy oranges with his big toes? Oh man, no. He says thank you and please, and he sits very still. He eats all before him with smiles and goodwill. He tries every new thing, at least one small bite. He makes no loud noises. That isn't polite. He never drops anything onto the floor, and after he's finished, he asks for some more. Eat up, little dinosaur. This is one of my favorite books as a dinosaur. I still see my book. Sorry. So this is one of my favorite books from we use this a lot in our programs, and for multiple reasons. One is I bring up the concept that I talked about earlier, which is there a dinosaur? Is there an animal in here that's not a dinosaur? We in the modern world, you go out and buy toys, you buy things, and all those toys I showed you are in the dinosaur bin, but they're not dinosaurs. So here is Quetzalcoatlus, and that is a big pterosaur. It was the largest flying animal that we know. I think actually there's been a couple they found that might be slightly bigger, and we'll see if I can get it on my thing. Yeah, there he is, looking over us right now. We have a model of a Quetzalcoatlus. Turns out that both the Stegosaurus and the Quetzalcoatlus came from the Smithsonian. When they redid all their halls, they had these things that they didn't want to return to their hallways and exhibits, and gave them to the Museum of the Earth. So we actually have some things that thousands and millions of people saw in Washington, D.C., but now you can see them in the Museum of the Earth. So Quetzalcoatlus was, yes, a big terrifying animal, but was not a dinosaur. So remember back when we started, we talked about dinosaurs lived during the time, animals that lived during the time of dinosaurs are not all dinosaurs. But the book talks about how do dinosaurs eat their food, and dinosaur eat their food is through, it's kind of a silly book about how we eat our food because dinosaurs aren't eating spaghetti and oranges. But how do they eat their food? So one of the things is this, which is a T-Rex tooth. I'm going to put this down here so you can see them close up. So I'm going to put this next to the Allosaurus. And you can see the size of this one. This is a juvenile, so this is a younger animal. But here's a T-Rex, and probably this is what would stick out of his mouth. The rest of it has fallen out of his mouth because it's so bad. It was probably so gross and and yucky. So we find full teeth. And then there's this ridge here. And what that ridge is for, and I don't have another tooth, is that the tooth underneath the gums would be moving up here. So it would be ready when this one left to start sticking out like this. So that's what would have been, that's what we would see underneath this here, is another tooth moving up in. So when that one would lose, it would get another teeth. So these predators had great ability to eat. It's shaped like a knife. That's what it does. Sorry. It's shaped like a knife. And it cuts meat. It doesn't chew. It doesn't do anything. It just cuts along. And T-Rex had 50-ish amount of these teeth in his mouth. So he had an incredible power to just cut and destroy bone as much as possible. The other thing I like to show is T-Rex had a lot wider teeth than a lot of these teeth. And we find them that he actually, because he was one of the later dinosaurs that evolved, that their teeth were a little bit different throughout their mouth. And the ones that were in the back were a little bit wider and could crush bone a little bit better compared to the front tearing teeth. So it was just interesting that we actually see T-Rex changing in his mouth to be involved with the ability to actually eat better and to be a better predator. So I threw all these things in here and now I can't find them. So how much time do we have? Okay. Sorry. So here is a dinosaur. Oh, you know what? I'm going to show you another predator dinosaur. This is a dinosaur that lived during T-Rex time. This is a carnotaur jaw, probably about as big as a T-Rex. Sharp, but you can see that his teeth aren't as wide as a T-Rex's teeth. So probably was very good at cutting things, but might not have been as good at crushing. But this is just a front nose of him. The rest of his body was back there, so you can imagine how big his whole front tooth was, or front jaw was. And a carnotaur lived not when the Stegosaurus lived, but lived when the T-Rex was alive. This is the lower jaw of a Parasaurolophus. There's Parasaurolophus, one of my daughter's favorites dinosaurs. These were similar to the real dinosaur bone I started the program with. But this guy is his lower jaw. He would chew on this surface, so this is worn off. But these are called megateeth. So this dinosaur had thousands of teeth, and they would just move up as they wore down. So remember, T-Rex lost their teeth, and all the meat eaters pretty much lost their teeth. This one would just wear his teeth down and regrow and resupply. So these were plant eaters, but incredibly efficient plant eaters. So what we find with these dinosaurs is we find herds and herds of them. And it's one of the reasons why I could show you its bones, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of real specimens out there that they're, almost like, I guess people want to call them like M&Ms. You just have lots of M&Ms. You can give them to all your friends. And that's kind of what happens with, unfortunately for these dinosaurs, is that there are so many of them. But they were so efficient. They were like the zebras. When you look at a picture of Africa and you see herds and herds of zebras, they are very similar to that kind of animal. One of the last dinosaurs on Earth that were what we call non-bird dinosaurs. Okay. A couple last ones is this one, which I always think of looks like a spoon. I always wished I ate my cereal in the morning with this. And this is a Camarasaurus tooth. Camarasaurus were one of these long-necked dinosaurs. And Camarasaurus skeletons were found out west in United States. Quite a lot. In fact, this was probably one of these other dinosaurs that there are a lot of dinosaurs like that. Was some of the biggest, not a big sized long neck dinosaur, but a very prominent or very common one that we find lots of fossils of. But it had teeth, show you, in its mouth, and it would just be at the front part of its mouth. That's good. No, it's blurry. Okay, blurry. And all of them were the same, like our carnivore dinosaurs, but you can see that this one is very almost looks like it's sharp, but it's very solid looking tooth. And so we think that these guys' diets were probably, would chomp on a branch and break up a branch and swallow it. Not very good chewing teeth. And so we think that these guys, because they had to break down plants, which are very hard to digest, would swallow stones. And so we find in the same area that we find these guys' skeletons, it's the Camarasaurus skeletons, rocks. And we call these gastroliths, and they're often smooth rocks that we find piles of, and usually the piles are right in the stomach area. So we know birds today who can't chew and digest their food will eat little bits of gravel. Well, when you're 60 feet long, you can eat bigger gravel. And so we think that these might have been from these skeletons and had been worn out from these skeletons. There's also paleontologists who will tell me that that's not true. So I always have to give the science part of it, is that some scientists believe that these are just river rocks, because most of these skeletons were found in floodplains. So in a place that would have flooded and all these bones would have kind of washed together. And so they think that these could have just been worn by water and not by stomachs of dinosaurs. I like the concept that they're worn by dinosaurs. So so that is those are some of the teeth. So we know a lot about what dinosaurs eat, and you may tell a story of a T-Rex eating some other dinosaur, and or you might like Parasaurolophus and you talk about them eating plants. But the reason we know that is through fossils. We know their fossils, we know their teeth. We study animals today and we learn about those teeth. And so it helps us to know about life a long time ago, because even though it feels like we've seen these animals moving and making noises and everything like that, we don't. These are extinct. They don't live on Earth anymore. And the reason we can bring them to life is because we have scientists who study their fossils. So I wanted to kind of break here, because this has been a long blurb of dinosaurs, and take any questions or anything if anybody wants to ask any questions.
Sure, if anyone has a question, you can either type it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Anyone has one? I have a question. What is your favorite dinosaur?
So my favorite dinosaur, I don't think I have, is a Diplodocus, and this is another long-necked dinosaur. And the reason is my favorite dinosaur is I also am a fossil preparator. And my first dinosaur bone that I worked on was a vertebra of a Diplodocus, and I was instantly in love. So that has always just been an amazing, when you're working on a big fossil and realize that that was just one bone of that animal, it just catches you. So that's my favorite.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
If we do not, I was going to also show you, just since we're in the exhibit here, I was just going to just show a little bit of the exhibit and just talk a little bit about our exhibit.
Yeah,
since
that would be great.
You can't be here. You're so far away.
The virtual tour.
So here's our Allosaurus. And then this whole mural here was painted by a local artist, and there's some brachiosauruses. And they were also those big dinosaurs, kind of related to the Chimaerosauruses that we are looking at their teeth. And we find their eggs so not only do we find dinosaurs, we find their eggs and their nests. The one thing about some of these long-necked dinosaurs is that we find their eggs. In fact, I think I have a fossil of one of them. I'll show you. Bring this guy back here. So this is an eggshell of one of those dinosaurs. It's not the Brachiosaurus, but this was found in probably South America somewhere. But you can see that over time, a huge, beautiful crystal grew off of the shell. So the shell's all that's left. But this dinosaur would have broken out of the egg, and it probably was about the size of a basketball. And so all I have left is actually that shell. But if you look at it pretty closely, you can see if it is very much, if you get really close to your eggs at home, it looks, that shell is similar. It's got little holes for the animal inside to breathe, but it's not very thick, so that little baby dinosaur could break itself out. So at the museum, we actually have a place to play. Let's see if I can get, which are giant dinosaur eggs, and not way too big to be real dinosaur eggs. And then we have a exhibit on how dinosaurs have changed in our view of dinosaurs, from the one on top, which is a brown speckled one, down to the kind of tannish running one. From our view of the same dinosaur, this is a Coelophysis. This is a dinosaur we think probably left the footprints in New York, so it's our only claim to fame. And we realize that over time, our view of how dinosaurs looked have changed over time. So the top dinosaur is a dinosaur that we probably, when I grew up in the 60s, we thought dinosaurs looked like, tail dragging, more upright, kind of heavier looking, compared to the dinosaur that's at the bottom there. And he is much more athletic and thin and active, and standing more in a T shape rather than up and down. So our views have changed, even though there is on the wall the fossil of that dinosaur. That hasn't changed at all. It is just the humans' interpretation of that. I'm going to go. So part of our exhibit is our Stegosaurus, but we also talk a little bit about the animals of the Jurassic and what New York looked like. So we do not have any of these, of the pictures. You can see the pictures in there. This is what we think New York looked like. There's no evidence that this is what New York looked like, because the glaciers have come through and removed all this rock in New York. So New York doesn't have it. And Long Island is much newer than any of what the rest of. So we in Ithaca are, let's get back here. We in Ithaca are in central New York, and our rocks are very old, and they are way before the dinosaurs. So I have children coming in and say, I found a dinosaur bone. And I know they couldn't, because we don't have that age rock around here. And then Long Island was created after, from the glaciers, all the sludge and everything the glaciers pulled down. And so most of your rocks are very new. So you might have, you know, ice age animals and different things like that you would find. But in New York, it's much older. So we just don't have, we have really new stuff and we have really old stuff, but all the stuff in between that dinosaurs walked on is gone. And so everything I showed you today is not from New York. It's not a New York fossil. And it puts, I think, a little tilt on the way we talk about the history of Earth in museum, because we can't say this is a New York fossil, because all we have are a few footprints of dinosaurs. So doesn't make us wish we couldn't find a dinosaur bone, but we're probably not going to find it. If we want to, you got to go out west where there's a lot of dinosaur bones out there. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Dr. Maureen?
Does anybody want to say what their favorite dinosaurs are?
No? Quiet group, that's okay.
Yeah, it's very quiet.
All right. Well,
I
this
did
is
bring a Velociraptor claw because I know Velociraptors are one of those favorite dinosaurs because of Jurassic Park. I have to say that Jurassic Park really did damage the way probably Velociraptors looked, which I think I have a toy of the one that probably the way Velociraptors looked, which would have been more bird-like. But you can see that their feet were pretty little. This was the claw. This is the claw of one, and you can see that about the size of my hand. And Velociraptors were probably the size of a 8-year-old boy or girl, and so they were not very big. So if that is your favorite dinosaur, they were amazing animals, and lots of different raptors that evolved through time. Also lived at the very edge of the end of the dinosaur period before the how do we say the dinosaur period? Before the meteorite hits the Earth, because birds do survive and make it to modern times. So I will always be happy that my turkey that I get to eat dinosaurs in Thanksgiving makes me feel like a carnivore.
All right. This was amazing. This is so insightful and educational, and we learned a lot. I learned a lot. I hope everyone else did. And if nobody has any other questions, I want to thank Dr. Maureen once again for this wonderful program. And do you have any last minute thoughts there?
No, I really appreciate you inviting me in, and it's been fun.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for joining, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.